Welcome to the Highwind Herald, a Final Fantasy podcast where we, two Final Fantasy obsessed brothers, discuss everything from Azura to Zell, and all things in between.
We are your hosts, Wolfkins and Soloist, the Brothers of Light.
As the intro suggests, welcome to the Highwind Herald. I'm Soloist, and to my right is...
I'm Wolfkins. You're actually to my right on my screen, so I don't know if that's really going to help anybody.
That's why I kind of hesitated. I was like, well, it might not be right on their end, but then I remembered I'm recording my screen, so it is going to be right on their end.
That's fair.
You might notice some webcam delay and lag. Right now it's synced up pretty good, but... I've got a really bad computer, and we just couldn't wait to start this anymore, and computers are expensive, so here we are. You'll probably just be listening to the audio anyway.
Fix that.
Yeah, we'll fix it.
You need to fix that.
You'll probably be listening to the audio anyway, so welcome to the first podcast. So this is going to be a Final Fantasy themed podcast, as the name suggests. We're not going to specifically be talking about Azura and Zell, but... that would be an interesting podcast.
Hold up. We should talk about Zell every episode.
We'll mention
every episode should have Zell in it somewhere.
We'll mention him. I mean, that is my favorite character in that game. So that we're going to be talking about everything: Final Fantasy 14, new Final Fantasy games, old Final Fantasy games, mobile Final Fantasy games. If I can ever bring myself to play them, because
you should. Some of them are actually pretty good. I really enjoy Record Keeper.
Mobile gaming is dangerous for me because I am a sucker for throwing my credit card at mobile games, so I've discovered that in the past few days.
Maybe you should throw that credit card at a new computer.
Yeah, I maybe should, right? So anyway, first on our list is introduction of hosts. I'll let you go first, because I'm gobbling like a turkey right now.
That's fine. My name is Wolfkins. I am the older brother of your other host here, Soloist. We just spend most of our time talking about Final Fantasy anyway, so we thought we would record something just in case anybody else thought this was interesting. Just a little bit about me. I've been playing Final Fantasy pretty consistently since 1999. My first introduction to this was all the way back with Final Fantasy VII, probably a very standard story that you've heard from people. Went over to one of my friend's house. He was the only friend I knew that had a PlayStation, so he introduced me to Final Fantasy VII, and I was just immediately enamored with this world and this type of game. I'd never played any kind of JRPG before, so I went home and I was like, Mom, I gotta get one of these PlayStations. And this was right around the time that Final Fantasy VIII was coming out, so for Christmas that year I got a PlayStation and then Final Fantasy VIII. So that was my first real game that I owned on myself. Like I said, though, I had never had a PlayStation before, so we did not realize that I needed a memory card. So I have played the beginning of Final Fantasy VIII about 30 times now until I was able to pick up a memory card. But ever since then, it just kind of started the love, and I've been playing all the way, through 11, 14. I'm still playing those, and just kind of excited to talk about some of this stuff, I guess. So yeah, that's me. What about you?
Well, I'm Soloist. I am an aspiring Twitch streamer and YouTube content creator, so this will be going up on the YouTube channel. So please subscribe, hit like, and comment. Even if the video is a little choppy, just close your eyes and pretend this is an actual podcast. So, yeah, I'm aspiring to do that. My introduction to Final Fantasy was weird. I'm 23, and my brother here is 30. 32?
You don't have to age me. It's fine. Older's good enough.
I was mostly hoping I remembered. So a lot of my experiences with Final Fantasy started with his experiences of watching him play a lot of the game. I watched him play tons of games growing up, like the Summoner. Was that the game with the weird D&D video in it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The attack the darkness at the end.
Yeah, that and Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy VIII stick out above any. But I was still a stupid little kid who couldn't handle a JRPG. Like, whenever you hear stories of Square Enix thinking back in the day that JRPGs were too hard for Americans, so they gave us Mystic Quest instead of 5, I'm the reason. Kids like me were the reason. I couldn't comprehend. Until one day...
Yeah, you sucked.
Yeah, I was really dumb. But I was about 9 years old and a little third grader, and he picks me up from school one day. He picked me and my sister up from school, and he had let one of his friends borrow Final Fantasy IX, and it was in the back seat. So I pick it up and I say, "I've never watched you play this one," and you told me, "Yeah, I couldn't beat it." So I went
Hold
home.
up now.
You did.
You're stretching that a little bit. You're stretching that a little bit. I got to the end, and I was just a little underleveled and just did not feel like grinding that out. I was just done with that game.
So I went home.
I have beaten it since.
yeah, that's true. I went home and popped it into PlayStation 1, and I became absolutely smitten with it. To this day, it's still my favorite game ever. And that's usually what they say, is that the first Final Fantasy game you truly own and play will be your favorite. And that stands true with Final Fantasy IX and me.
That's probably true. As you can see, my Squall and Renoa, if you are watching the video, my pillow here in the background.
Yeah.
So.
Final Fantasy IX, so I played it, and I loved it. And then I think the next one I instantly tried to play was 8. Because, per your recommendation, and I got towards the end of Disc 3. Well, I just quit playing it. And then I beat 10-2, weirdly enough. And then I went to 6 and started going backwards. So that's my most story with Final Fantasy.
That's an interesting order there, 9, 8, 10, 2. You didn't tell the best part of that story.
Oh, yeah? What was it?
The night that you finally beat Final Fantasy 9.
Oh, okay. Final Fantasy 9 took me uncannily a long time to beat because I loved it, but I was still a stupid little kid who didn't understand anything. So I beat the game finally and bawled like a baby. It doesn't have it has a very sad ending, but that completely flew over my head whenever I was a kid.
Yeah, you didn't get any of the sadness from that ending.
I didn't.
There was
didn't understand.
none of that. That was way too subtle for you.
I was mostly sad because I couldn't play it anymore. And even then,
Well, that's not even true, too, because you've played it about 160 times since then.
That is easily the game I've beaten most in my life. So, yeah, I've played it a lot. I remember I would log in still after I beat it and log in like it's an MMO and go and just kill Grand Dragons and level up for no reason at all. But that's absolutely my favorite game ever since then. Are we still doing our top 5s in here?
No, I think we're going to push that to another episode. We got a lot to talk about today. So
that's fine. So I'm not going to go into more of my favorites because we're going to save it for that. All right. I almost got ahead of myself. I'm horrible for that. But yeah, that's
that was
that's mostly my
that was the original plan, but we've got some big news to talk about.
Yeah,
so.
This kept getting delayed, and since it got delayed, big things came up, and we can't let those things go at all. So yeah, that's mostly my introduction to Final Fantasy.
Perfect. Sounds awesome. I mean, I was there for all of it, so I knew that. But
yeah, of
for
course.
those that may be interesting. So, the big topic that we wanted to talk about today, as most people could probably guess, was Final Fantasy 16. So we're getting ready to get into that. I did want to bring up, I have 2 pieces of news I just kind of wanted to go over really quick before we kind of get into the meat of that. One was pretty interesting. I found out yesterday. I'm not sure if you're familiar with trusted reviews. I myself have not actually heard of them before, but they did just have their best game of the year, and they did award that to Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I thought it was a little interesting. They were doing that in October.
So what was that website called?
Trusted Reviews.
Trusted Reviews.
And if you follow Final Fantasy VII Remake on Twitter, they retweeted it. On October 6th, they did, best game winner, Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Well, I think when it comes to the Game Awards this December, I think Final Fantasy VII is a shoe-in to at least be nominated.
Yeah, I think so too. I know that, and we can talk about that in a future date too, because I personally have beaten this game into the ground. You're still struggling through it, I know.
I haven't beaten it. I'm in a lull right now where I keep starting long JRPGs and stopping them. So, yeah, I'll finish it
this
one day.
This one is really worth it, I think. 7R has made it into my top 5. I mean, we'll talk about that another day too, but
yeah.
I really enjoyed this game. I think it really probably deserves at least the nominations. I don't know if it should win. I haven't played all the games this year, but I definitely think it should be up there. Everything about it I really like.
Not a lot of games have come out this year, so I mean, you have the two big wins,
true.
Last of Us and Ghost, but I mean, other than that,
true. It's got some competition. But,
yeah.
I'm a little biased. I like Final Fantasy, so I am a little biased. But I really thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game.
Absolutely.
The other thing, there's been a little bit more information that came out about Final Fantasy XIV, for those of you that play that. Just a reminder, we are having another Letter to the Producer live tomorrow, October 9th, tomorrow of this recording.
Yeah.
That's going to be at about 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And this is where they just kind of go over all of the stuff coming out, give you some highlights about what's coming down the pipe. And they did announce earlier today that patch 5.35 is going to be going live on Tuesday, October 13th. So we're going to get a couple more things. I believe this is when we're going to be able to move forward with our resistance weapons and things like that. Some other good things. I think that might be a good thing to talk about next week once we have the patch out and the information.
Once I understand most of the words you said, we can talk about that.
Right. Well, anyway, the live stream is tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 4 a.m. Pacific. Odd times, but they're doing it on Japanese time. That just happens to be where it falls.
Any Nintendo fan is used to waking up at wee hours in the morning to get news because they do the same thing.
Yeah.
I need to catch up.
7's not that early. You do. I actually was just playing it a little bit before we started recording. That's kind of my game right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good stuff going on.
I absolutely need to get back into it. I hit a wall with MMOs bad. I was playing 14 a lot, and then my buddies got me into WoW Classic, and that killed me. That absolutely killed me.
Yeah, well, you should come back to 14 because patch 5.3 was kind of the end of the Shadowbringers story arc. Kind of wraps up a lot of that stuff.
I still haven't seen that.
It was good. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff going on in 14 right now, so it's worth checking out. And if you haven't checked it out, if you've not played it at all, the most recent patch really condensed a bunch of the kind of slog you had to go through in the beginning, and they also extended their free trial, so you can play all the way up to 60 now through the first expansion without ever having to pay for anything.
The best content of the game story-wise, in my opinion. So
arguably,
Arguably,
Heaven's Ward is one of the best. Yeah,
it's great. It's one of the best stories in the series, let alone just Final Fantasy XIV.
True, Shadowbringers is good as well.
Shadowbringers is good.
I
absolutely.
I go back and forth on those two.
I loved Heaven's Ward. There's no contest for me. So we will be talking more about that in the future. Whenever I dive in and can actually have some input, because I still have to go do the Crystal Tower raids. So maybe we can log in and do that sometime before then.
Yeah, I can help you with that. They're really easy at this point. I mean, you still have to do them synced.
It's just about doing them.
They go quick.
Yeah.
They go really quick.
Well,
I think it took me like 20 minutes. It's like a normal dungeon length just because of how fast everybody kind of burns things down.
Wonderful. All right, is that the 2 points you wanted to discuss? Anything else?
Yeah, that's the news. I think, we can move into the big topic of the day, which is a discussion about the Final Fantasy XVI trailer that dropped. So, this will be an interesting discussion.
It will.
Just full disclosure, we do have a little bit of differing opinions on this.
We've tried to stay very separate on this. Our videos, by the way, just a little update, are struggling. The frame rate is real bad, but the mouths go back and forth between. But what I'm doing here is awful. So there's a chance that we might just use an overlay in just audio for this first episode. We just might have to. Because this is bad. Fine. But
you're the production guy. I leave this in your hands.
If that happens, just ignore all of the webcam talk, please. Thank you. All right. So I was talking right into the mic. I'm using a different mic for Discord than I'm recording. So let's get into Final Fantasy 16. And now I don't know if you've found this update yet, and I've kept meaning to save this, so I'm gonna have to look it up really quick. But there is a possible teased. Oh gosh, that's what 16 is. There's possible a teaser that. Okay, here it is. I just googled it, and according to Dual Shockers, which I don't know if that's a trustworthy site, Final Fantasy 16 Final Fantasy 16 is yet to receive its final rating from ESRB and PEGI, but a provisional label from PEGI reveals that the game has been rated for people above 18, meaning that this could be the first ever rated M Final Fantasy game.
Well, I think that it would be the first main series rated M. I want to say they had another like spin-off that got an M rating at one point.
The only one I could think of would probably be Dirge of Cerberus. That might be.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Who knows?
I did hear that. That's interesting to me. I think Type 0 HD. I think Type 0 had an M rating.
It did? Oh, wow. So that would be very...
Type 0 did. That
would be very... Well, for a mainline Final Fantasy game, that would be very interesting. And one comment I need to... Ooh, wow. That one thing I just did made my hair look significantly better. Anyway, the one thing that I've kind of noticed from the trailer is that this game looks like it's trying to be rated M.
I kind of got the same vibe. It looked like it was going for a much more gritty, realistic kind of feel. I remember texting you as soon as we watched it. It gave me a very Game of Thrones feel. Mm-hmm. And there's that one scene where somebody gets cut down and then all that blood just splashes on the kid's face. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah. That said M rating to me right there.
Wow. So you said Game of Thrones, Phil. That was the biggest thing that stuck out to me about this trailer is that, when Final Fantasy first started out, they were a high fantasy RPG. Final Fantasy 1, King's Castles, 4 people who didn't talk. It was great. It was great times. We had a good time. I wasn't alive, but we had a good time. Final Fantasy 2 kind of added a little bit of a personality to them, but had horrible gameplay, so it doesn't count. And Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 3, they were mute again. But my point is, it was high fantasy up to like Final Fantasy 6 is where they kind of started making the transition and having a little bit of steam powered things. But they're still high fantasy.
I feel like 7 was the first real departure.
7 was the first leap into having they replaced kings and castles and kings with corporations and presidents.
Here's the problem though: is that 7 was really the West's first major influx into Final Fantasy. Like, we had others on the Super Nintendo, but 7's where it really kicked off. So for a lot of people, that kind of feel is Final Fantasy.
That's true for a lot of people in the West. But and I don't mean to sound super weeby and say like Japan is homeland, but but I really like to think about this from its source material. I feel like what we view Final Fantasy as foundations doesn't matter as much as what they view, because that's its homeland. Final Fantasy's homeland. So returning to this is kind of like good for them, and I'd be more happy that they're happy than we're happy, because its odds are I'm going to be happy if they're happy. So
here's the thing, though: the Western market is huge, though.
It is.
So I mean, I get what you're saying in theory, but you have to please a lot of the Western market, because that's where a lot of your revenue is going to come from these games.
Absolutely.
And I kind of get the vibe that's what they're doing. I mean, when you look at 16. When you look at actually all of the more recent Final Fantasies, even 15 started to have more of that Western RPG feel to me.
They did.
The more open world. It moved away from the JRPG traditional. And the 16, I mean, it looked more like it looks like
Kingdom
based
Hearts.
off of like Skyrim or The Witcher or something like that.
Yeah. So, exactly. Final Fantasy 7 completely pushed away from medieval. Final Fantasy 8 replaced the kings and stuff with schools and principals. Final Fantasy 9 was the game that kind of pushed back. I'm not going to say it fully pushed back to high fantasy. It kind of pushed back to more like a transition between 5 and 6. Because there was still a lot of mispowered stuff and a lot of technology, as opposed to like 5 and down when there's like virtually no technology, and except for 4 when you go to the friggin' moon, but that's whatever, that's beside the point. So 9 was kind of the throwback to high fantasy. And the first thing I saw a lot of people saying with 16 is that it's doing what 9 did, and throwing back to high fantasy. And I don't think that's fair. Just because 15 was so far from high fantasy, it hurt. Even though they did have monarchs, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's high fantasy, because you had cars and gas stations. Not even close.
15 was not high fantasy
at all. But I don't think you can call 16 a throwback. And I thought a lot about this since I said it was a throwback, because 14 is high fantasy. 13 was not.
Yeah.
I don't know what 13 was. 12 was high fantasy. 11 was high fantasy. 10 was the beach episode. So, it's kind of a throwback because Final Fantasy has been hit and miss with their high fantasy tropes lately. I'm happy to see it. The first thing I said when I watched this trailer was, thank God, I far like Final Fantasy better when it's set in the high fantasy setting, which is contradicting to my top 3 games, but it is just where I like Final Fantasy the best. I like Final Fantasy whenever you have knights, mages, and all that. I appreciate it when they break that, obviously, because I like change, but it feels good to see them going back to that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It does. It's interesting to see, the high fantasy type setting return, and I love high fantasy. D&D, Witcher. Obviously I love high fantasy.
Absolutely.
So, I'm interested in a high fantasy game. That wasn't really my problem with the trailer. Problem's probably not the right word. This trailer just didn't really light me on fire like I was really hoping it would. And I know that you and I, this is where we had different opinions, because I know you were very excited. I'm looking forward to a high fantasy game. It's just the stuff that I saw, it wasn't really like electrifying me. I am slightly concerned with the gameplay. I was not a huge fan of the battle system and the gameplay of Final Fantasy 15, and I'm getting very strong Final Fantasy 15 vibes from it.
I am on an opposite end of that. Final Fantasy, I like the Final Fantasy 15 gameplay before I get into this, but the main gameplay revolved around holding square, I think, to auto-attack. You didn't mash. You held it and you auto-attacked. And that made the game feel a little more constrained, like kind of cinematic. You watch your characters do things while you're moving. You still move around, but it's not like Kingdom Hearts, like where you have precise attacks that are like quick and, tight. It wasn't like that. You held it down and you watched them do cinematic swings. This game looked more akin to Kingdom Hearts than it did that to me. Meaning,
and you might be right.
It looks more action oriented than 15 did.
It gave me, again, I don't mean to keep bringing up The Witcher, but it did give me vibes from that, which is good. But you still had like the warping and all that stuff, which kind of reminded me of 15. I was kind of personally, and we don't know. I mean, this is just a trailer, so we don't really know exactly what it's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I was personally hoping for something a little more akin to what I saw in 7 Remake. I really enjoyed that battle system. I thought it was a really strong blend of action-oriented combat that also kind of harkened back to the menus and everything of your traditional Final Fantasy. And it might be something like that. We don't know.
And I don't know if this has ever been...
just from what I saw in the trailer.
We don't know if this has ever been announced, but we don't know when this trailer is made.
True. And that actually brings me up to another point I wanted to bring up. There's been a lot of talk on the internet about the graphics. So I just wanted your opinion. What do you think about how the trailer looked? Like, because, they didn't use any pre-rendered scenes. They used everything was supposed to be from the game itself.
Listen, man.
So what did you think about it? Because there's been some mixed reviews.
I have really, really bad eye for graphics. I'm playing a PS2 game right now, and my jaw dropped at a view. And other people probably would have thought it looked awful and jaggy and stupid, but I liked it. That is the one thing I didn't take away an opinion about the trailer from. I thought it looked like Final Fantasy. I thought it did. I thought it looked like Final Fantasy 14 a lot.
It did. And that's why I was okay with it. Again, I'm really into 14. So I didn't even pick up on the fact that it doesn't quite look as good as a lot of the other PS5 games they were showing off. That's been the major complaint.
And it doesn't. I mean...
But I'm okay with it. But I thought it looked fine. I thought it looked good. But yeah, I didn't think it was quite up to the same level of, say, your Miles Morales Spider-Man.
I think it's an early build. And another thing is, it's Square Enix. When have they ever released an ugly game? I mean, for its time, 13 was beautiful. 15 is still beautiful. 12 for the PS2 is insane. I mean,
Yeah, say what you will about 12. It was pretty.
Yeah, I don't want to say trust the company because that's usually where a lot of disappointment comes. But if you're worried about it's an early build more than likely. The game is, I am willing to bet, not going to come out until like 2028.
Well, that was going to be my question because actually IGN just recently tweeted, and by recently I mean 11 a.m., the Square Enix has, quote, completed basic development and scenario production on Final Fantasy 16 already. So,
Really?
and
I
you
didn't
know,
see that.
from what I've been reading, it sounds like they've been working on it for quite a while. So do you actually think that it's going to be another 15 situation where we're waiting 5 more years on this?
I was mostly being dramatic when I said that. I don't think it's going to be dramatic like 15.
But they do have a habit of doing that.
They did
15 started as first was 13. They changed, then they kept making. I mean, we waited forever on that game.
7 Remake was a long wait too.
True. Well, that wait felt longer because people started waiting for it before they ever even said they were going to do it. Yeah. So that one feels way longer than it actually should have been.
That's true. I just remember, I think it was at the same E3 that 7 Remake and Kingdom Hearts 3 got announced. And those two games will always go...
I don't recall, but they were close.
Those two games will always go in infamy as taking forever to come out for me. And one of them was more disappointing than the other.
I was thoroughly satisfied with both of those that you mentioned. The wait was well worth it for me on both of those games.
I think I'm gonna say right now, if you had to come out with a year, $50 on the table that you're betting everything on, I'm gonna say 2022.
If $50 is everything for you, you probably shouldn't be picking this game up. Let's just say that.
I'm 20 short.
Second of all. 2022 was my suggestion too. I do not think we'll be seeing it next year, especially with everything going on with COVID.
Yeah,
and all that stuff. Next year is likely out of the question. I think 2022 also.
2022.
I hope. I mean, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
I'm also hoping pretty soon that we'll get confirmation that Final Fantasy 14 is moving to PS5 also.
Oh, there's no way it's not happening. There's no way. That game's in its height.
That's what I'm waiting for.
They did announce that it's coming
to...
Booming. They did announce it's coming to Xbox, didn't they?
I don't remember. I don't follow as much of the Xbox. I'm a PlayStation guy. So.
I feel like I remember. I'm never going to play it on Xbox. I mean, why would I? I've got my PlayStation. I can play it on. But I don't know. So I think it's going to come out in 2022. The graphics wise, though, I think people need to just relax. It's an early build. They probably... I mean, I think they were ready to show the trailer, but trailers most of the time, I don't know. I think I have full confidence that it's going to look great at release.
Yeah, I do. And I think it'll be polished, of course. Like you said, they've still got some time to update things, and I don't think it looks bad as it is. So even if it released as it is, I would be fine with it.
Me too.
I am very used to the whole Final Fantasy XIV art style, so I probably wouldn't even notice any kind of...
And Final Fantasy XIV is a gorgeous game.
Because I look at it all the time.
Final
it
Fantasy
is.
XIV
As far,
especially
as far as MMOs go.
Yeah, it's there's not
beautiful,
even...
I think.
There's hardly any contest with that. Hardly any at all.
Every time I load into WoW, I'm like, man, that tree. Look at that tree. Even after the update, that tree's got nothing on 14. I
wish WoW would look better. I really do. I like WoW a lot, but sometimes it just looks a little, you know what I mean?
So anyway, what's your overall opinion on the 16 trailer? So thoughts, but let's hear it.
I think the biggest thing driving home for me is the return to high fantasy. It does look more like a Skyrim or Witcher thing, like you said, and that is something that Final Fantasy has never done. I'm happy with it. Skyrim personally did not work for me. In fact, I think that game kind of sucks. But I think sorry, put your pitchforks down.
I agree. Yeah. I never really got into it either.
I thought the art style though, the snowy settings, the everything was just wonderful. I thought so. And Final Fantasy in that setting, I don't see how I could not be excited. I'm absolutely excited. I like that Final Fantasy. You know, a lot of people are upset that Final Fantasy went away from the turn-based combat, but that's been gone since 11, really. Honestly, I mean, 13 kind of had a little bit of turn-based, but 13 had whatever the heck it was. But
I don't need turn-based combat. I think I was, like I said, I liked what they did in 7R. That was a nice blend. I just don't know if I like the full action Kingdom Hearts direction, but it might work. We'll see.
And you know, I personally, because 15, I love 15. I thought 15 was unique and fun. I thought it wasn't like any other Final Fantasy game. It wasn't like any other game. It was just like 15, and I like that. 7 Remake did play very fun. I think there's no way at all that this game does not play like 7 Remake. After how successful that game was, I don't think there's any way. I think this is going to be a good blend of 7 Remake and 15.
Well, here's your problem, though. You know, if you look at the original Final Fantasies up through, 9, really, maybe even 10, they had very similar play styles.
They did.
Like, if it wasn't turn-based or the active turn-based, they had different takes on it, but very different play styles. But ever since 13, it's like they just change it up every time. And they've lost all consistency with their play styles. And, you know, for good or ill, you get a totally fresh experience every Final Fantasy now. But you don't have that feeling of that kind of ties it back to its roots at all. Really, because 15 plays totally different than 7R, could play different than 16, totally different than 13. It's just, I don't know. It's a weird direction that they've kind of gone in here. Yeah. What do you think about the idea that this game could possibly do away with the party system? Again, no confirmation, but just from the trailer, it looks like
you're a solo. You're a one man parade, one man army. My Final Fantasy heart aches at that, because part of the best thing about Final Fantasy is building relationships between party members and watching them interact. Your team. That's part of the best thing about Final Fantasy. You know, Final Fantasy IX is my favorite game, and my favorite thing about that game is Zidane's relationship with all of the people in the game. Now, if it does, which we don't know, if it does have just one party member and it's just your main character, it depends on how they go about it. A lot of games are very successful with that nowadays. So you have to go all in with it. You have to, like, fully be able to customize. I have to be able to do anything I want with that character. I have to be able to be like a
it'll have to have a big...
Yeah, it's got to be very customizable. I have to feel like I'm playing an MMO if I'm alone. I can't feel constricted. Now, I think that this game would be better off if it had a party system. I really do. But
I agree.
I'm going to predict that it won't. I just am. I'm just going to go there.
Predict what? I'm sorry.
I'm predicting that it's just going to be a one-man army. I'm going to make that bold prediction.
That's the vibe I'm getting. I'm hoping that's not true, but that was the vibe I was getting from watching the trailer. Just because the whole trailer seemed to be based around one person. Because, you know, there's that thing at the end, and there's some argument about whether or not it's the same person, but it shows him and then what looks to be like an older version of him. Mm-hmm. So obviously he's going to be your main character, but it focused so heavily around him. There were some scenes like around the campfire where you look like you might have other party members. Which this brings up another issue I kind of had. There didn't seem to be, if that was your party, again, no female characters. So, you know, kind of doing the whole 15
another Wiener Fest
boys
basically.
Club, which, you know,
I mean,
a lot of my favorite characters are the female characters. I actually, that's one of the things I didn't like about 15 is I didn't like my core group not changing and just being 4 guys.
I liked 15 because, you know, the game built off of a 4-way bromance kind of situation. You know, you're with your bros, you're having a good time,
and that's the story they're telling.
That's the story they're telling.
Fine. I personally
think
the girl.
Yeah, I personally think they did that well, and I would think it would be a problem if that were like the second or third Final Fantasy game that did it, but it was just the first, so I thought it'd be fine. Them doing it again is questionable Because I don't know.
I hope that's not the direction.
Chilling with my bros is a lot more fun if I'm in a convertible than if I'm in a wagon being pulled by a chocobo. You know?
Well, I'm a big, I love me a good romance is the thing.
We
so,
haven't had that in Final Fantasy in forever.
Well, there was some in 13 with Snow and
but
Sarah.
Their romance was already established. I'm agreeing with you. I like the romance that builds from nothing to something, and they kind of teased that in 12 a little bit, but
12. Who knows what was going on in 12? I couldn't follow half of that stuff.
The main character is like the third least important character in that game.
Yeah,
he doesn't do anything. Yeah. I don't know.
You just pick him right out; he's fine. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of miss that dynamic. I miss my Renoas. I miss my Aeriths. I just miss those from 15 because the romance they were kind of building in 15, I never really bought into. Mm-hmm. I never really kind of got behind.
Well, it's because you never saw her.
Luna Freya.
You never saw her.
There were some missed opportunities there. I feel like.
Yeah.
Now, when they were together, I kind of felt it, but they just weren't together that often.
That's true.
And I don't know. I like that personally. It's not a make or break for me if they don't have that. I just like that aspect, and even in most of my movies and stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I agree with that statement. But with 15, it looks like we're not going to be getting that. I read somewhere, and I won't be able to find it. I don't know. It looks like the story is about your main character is kind of like a guard for that little boy it keeps showing. So it looks like it's setting up for a God of War-like story, where, in God of War, it was just Kratos taking care of his son the whole time. It looks like it's kind of setting up for that kid,
does he become Ifrit or Phoenix in the trailer? That was very unclear, too. That was kind of exciting.
It was a very Final Fantasy trailer, meaning that who knows what was going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they dropped, a lot of words and terminology that we don't know, like like Shiva's dominant. What does that mean exactly? Is that someone who summons?
There was
Shiva, or
there was one quote that gave me goosebumps. It's like, the Eidolons have determined our destiny for too long, and then I was like, ooh. Here's another problem I have. Final Fantasy is the same but different every game, right? You got your chocobos.
I mean, that's kind of its thing.
This, we had 13, 14 big time, 15, and now 16 looks like, where summons are a huge part of the story, and I'm getting a little sick of it. Now, Final Fantasy has done that a lot. 6, whole thing was about Espers. 9, not all about summons, very important part of it. 10 wasn't about it at all.
I wouldn't say it's all about it, but 9 definitely had some big moments with summons.
And that, I thought that was good. 10 wasn't about summons at all, hardly. You had the summoner.
What are you talking about? That was the story. The summoner going around gathering. What are you talking about?
That's true.
That was the core part of that story.
I was just thinking about Sin a lot. But I don't know. 7 wasn't. 8 definitely wasn't.
Well, actually, 8 has a little bit, because there is the whole thing about the Guardian Forces being the reason their memories are gone, too.
My biggest thing...
It's tied in, but they're not about it.
It's like 15, they were the gods, which is cool. It was awesome. 13... 13 wasn't... I don't know anything about 13. 14, they're primals, they're big. It's just, I'm getting a little sick of having the story revolve around them.
For 14, it really works because it gives you a constant slew of bosses.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it's good for 14. I see where you're coming from, though. That's something I hadn't really considered.
I'm just a little sick of it.
But it does seem they're leaning really heavily into the summons again.
Yeah, I'm just...
7 Remake wasn't really about them either, so you've got a little bit of that.
7 wasn't... I can't think of 7 really being about summons at all, hardly. Summons are important.
Well, no, because they were just materia.
Yeah, summons are important in all of the games. Like, Bahamut is some big, huge figurehead in every Final Fantasy game. I'm not saying I don't want any summons. What I'm saying is that just calm down. 9 did it fine. They were important in 9, but, Lord, at the end of the day, it wasn't the make it or break it of the story. You know what I mean? I'm having a hard time conveying my thought. Yeah. And that looks like...
No, I understand.
Yeah, 15 was like that big time, and it's looking like... Not only is 16 looking like it's setting up to do that again, but it's also looking like it's setting up for Ifrit to be one of the final bosses again, which was weird in 15, albeit. But to do it again, I mean, 16 had a big focus on Ifrit. It looked like, anyway, whatever the heck that fire thing was.
Yeah, well, actually, I think in their logo, isn't Ifrit one of them? Isn't it like the Phoenix and Ifrit or something like that in the Final Fantasy 16 logo?
I haven't studied it close enough. I don't really know.
I think so.
Yeah.
I have to double check.
But I think overall, the trailer was hype. I'm excited for a new Final Fantasy game. I was worried that they were going to milk and just focus on 7 and not have another main entry for a long time. I was afraid we would see and I'm not saying that'd be a bad thing. I want 7 Part 2 as quick as I can. I'd like to be 7 Part 1 first. But I was worried that they were just going to milk 7. Like they do with 13. They milked the heck out of 13. They started milking the heck out of 15. It feels like that's just Final Fantasy's tradition now, is to release a numbered title and then milk it until people absolutely refuse to play it, and then release a new one. And that seems like what their tradition is. And this is kind of breaking... Well, it's not really breaking those conventions. It's been a long time since 15 came out. But I don't know.
Yeah, what I think they do is their numbered ones take so long. I think they milk it, sure, because they want to make as much money as they can, but it gives them something to publish between it. Something faster, because when you start iterating on the same thing, the development cycle cuts down a little bit. So it's easier to get out of 13.3 than it is a Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's two sides to the same coin. They're milking it because they want money.
Absolutely.
At the same time, if you're interested in that stuff, you've got Final Fantasy content where otherwise you would be waiting decade for it.
I don't so much think 7 would be milking it, because I think a lot of people at first wanted 7 Remake to be the full game. Personally, I don't see how that's feasible at all in the slightest, because
there's too much for what they were trying to do.
I mean, 7, you can't remake 7's full game into a game nowadays, because most of 7 is walking around on a very empty, low polygon map from town to town, which are just little buildings. How do you translate that into a fully 3D game?
Well, and I was thinking about it. When you really think about those PlayStation 1 era Final Fantasies, 7, 8, and 9, the world map, for the most part, is empty.
Yeah.
There's always one abandoned continent, too. That way they have a whole continent on the map where there's almost nothing there.
Yeah.
And there's always some story region for it, but I've got my maps up on the wall over here.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of looking at the 8 map, and you've got, the Cetra continent, I believe it was. Yeah. I can't remember the exact name of the continent. But the whole continent, it's just all gone except for the orphanage. And there's a reason for it. It explains it in the story. But it was a way to fill the world out without having to design all those places. So I'm interested, though, to see how they do that with the 7 remake.
Well, I'm pretty sure they're just...
I'm just going to leave
if they do
plains of empty stuff.
See, my worry is that they're going to skip it and just have you fast travel to the next town. That's my worry. What I want them to do is just remake it, flesh it out. Make it like Pulse in 13. Have things running around. Make it like 15. Just a giant open world.
That would be cool.
Make it like giant open
world.
Pulse
in 15, yeah.
Hopping on your motorcycle and traveling fast, and why not?
Well, at least for Part 2, you wouldn't have to do the entire game anyway. Depending on how far up you go, you wouldn't have access to the Highwind. So
Part 2 would probably end at someone's death anyway, I would predict. So
Temple of the Ancients is where I've seen most people say it should end.
Yeah. But so that deviated a little bit from Final Fantasy 16. But
yeah, we got a little off topic.
That kind of is my final thoughts. What's your final thoughts on the Final Fantasy 16 trailer?
So I'm excited about Final Fantasy 16, of course. I'm going to play it. I was a little underwhelmed, I guess, is the best word to say. I'm going to follow it. I'm going to just eagerly eat up any kind of information I can. I was just underwhelmed. I just don't think it was exactly what I was expecting. It seemed a little darker, and I think it kind of goes back to that M rating that we were talking about, at the beginning. I think that's what they're going for, and it just wasn't necessarily the vibe I was hoping for, if that makes sense. I like, Final Fantasies do touch on some dark stuff. For the most part, though, they have kind of a lighter vibe, I feel like. This one just seemed to have a much more kind of heavy, realistic vibe. So,
yeah,
you know,
well, 15
not,
was... I thought 15 was lighthearted until, like, a little towards the end, and then it just kind of got depressing and dark and...
Yeah, right. Well, exactly,
really sad.
exactly. But this one just seemed from the get-go, like,
depressing.
a little darker. And
yeah.
that's fine. I mean, I'll play it. I'll probably still like it. But it just, I don't know, just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea first off the bat. But that might change with future trailers. I mean, we could be talking in a year from now and it'd be like, whoa, trailer number 2 totally just gave me everything I wanted.
And you know, the less we have to wait, the better. Honestly, with this, the less we have to wait, the better.
True.
I'm not prepared for a short wait. I'm prepared for a long haul. I'm prepared to wait it out because it's Square and daggone it, Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake. I'm looking at you. I'm not prepared for this to come anytime soon. So I'll eagerly await. I'm ready for it now, especially since I'm in a lull. Finally picked up a new JRPG playing Rogue Galaxy.
Stop. Finish 5.3, then go back to Rogue Galaxy. It's not that much content.
I already started it. Well, I can hop in 15 or 14 and do that. That's not bad. But I've been really in the itch for a big single player game. And I've played most of the Final Fantasy games, so yeah. Haven't beat 2, 8, or 13. Or 7 Remake.
Yeah, I'm currently, I've played almost all of them. But I'm deciding to go back and beat some of the ones I never beat in the past. So it's mainly the middle sections, like 2 through 6. Actually, that's it, because I've beaten all the others.
Some of the better games ever in the series. 4,
so I did start
6.
5. So I'm about an hour and a half into 5, so
I will say
I will keep you posted on that as we go.
And this can be a good conversation for a later time. But I will say probably the strongest generation of Final Fantasy I think would be the Super Nintendo 4, 5, and 6. I think that's the strongest, consistent wise, in my opinion.
I've played those. I haven't, like I said, I never finished all of them, but I don't know. 7, 8, and 9 I think are still, for me, the top. I'll let you know after I beat 4, 5, and 6. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like 4, 5, and 6 I love. Love 1, don't like 2 at all. Like 3, or love 3. Love 7, really don't know about 8. And love 9. And then the generations kind of get muddy after that. But, yeah.
Yeah. But we are off topic, so I think this might be a good place to kind of wrap this episode up. Like I said, we do have some big news coming out about Final Fantasy XIV on the 9th, so I think that next time we could probably kind of divulge some of that out. But yeah, I think basically what we're going to try to do is record every Wednesday or so and get these up as soon as Soloist can actually edit things together, because that's all his stuff that he's doing.
So a quick, if you want to do a quick shout out, where they can find you and see what thoughts you're having, and if they ever want to know what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. You can find me on Twitter at Wolfkins, WOLFKINZ. That's where I do most of my stuff. We also do have a website. It is highwindherald.com. I'm going to be putting up the show notes there. That's mainly what that's going to be used for. And we also have a Discord channel that I'm kind of getting set up now, and the link to that will be on highwindherald.com. So what about you, Solos?
Well, me, as I said at the beginning of the video or podcast, I'm kind of an aspiring content creator, just starting out, not very big yet. So this YouTube channel here that this will be uploaded on, if you're watching this or listening to this somewhere else, it's just Soloist on YouTube. I'm Let's Player, currently Let's Playing Banjo-Kazooie, so come check it out. It's a good time. You can also find me on Twitch, Starcaller Soloist, all one word, where I stream every Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. Saturdays are retro days, and starting this Saturday will be Saturday morning cartoons and retro day. That'll be fun. You don't want to miss that. Tuesday and Thursday we're streaming variety right now. Hot sometimes. Been streaming Phasmophobia. It's a great game. Hopefully going to start streaming 14 soon, as soon as my computer doesn't suck so bad. But you can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter at Soloist_TV. Don't ask about that. Soloist was taken, so that's the best I could get. So you can find me on Twitter there. And I think that's about all. Check out the website, Discord. Good things are happening around the Brothers of Light.
Yeah. One more thing that I forgot to do at the top of the show. And, we had talked about this previously, but I'm pretty sure you forgot about it. So I went easy on you today. It's a trivia question that I looked up.
Okay. So
it's easy. You get it. You'll get it.
So is it starting?
So I'm going to do this at the top of the show.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can pick one for next time. So I've got one for you. It's real simple. I will make fun of you if you miss it, just because of it's from Final Fantasy IX.
I'll miss it. I know I will.
No, you won't. You know what? Yeah, you've got this. You got this. You ready?
Yeah.
The theater ship Prima Vista is powered by what source of energy?
Mist.
You got it. There you go. I told you.
The plot of the whole game.
That sounded like a guess.
No. I was like, Mist? I thought you were about to ask me what the ship's name was, and I was like, oh, God. And then you said Prima Vista. And
I should have done that. I should have done that.
Or I thought you were going to ask me what the Band of Thieves' name was. I was like, well, Tantalus. But I would not have remembered Prima Vista at all.
I didn't want to throw you a huge curveball on the first one, especially because I knew you had forgotten we were going to do trivia questions.
I knew we were going to do
Even I forgot to do it at the top.
I remember we were going to do something, but I forgot what. Now I remember, so I'm ready.
I picked a 9 one for you, an easy one. Just keep that in mind when you pick yours for next week. I did a
Final Fantasy
easy.
3. What is it?
Thanks. I'm expecting like who does Renoa end up with at the end of Final Fantasy? Okay,
yeah.
I'm looking for an easy one.
Okay,
but anyway, so yeah, we will be doing
right?
a trivia. There you go. There's the Zell for the episode. We'll be doing a trivia question at the top of each episode. We're going to go back and forth, so he'll give me one next time. We'll post those in the show notes with the answer further down in the show notes. Starting off easy, hopefully, and then I'll get to asking you about who the producer of Final Fantasy II was about 6 months from now.
Yeah, I'm going to have to study. Lord have mercy.
All right.
That sounds bad.
That's it for me, I believe. Soloist, do you have anything else?
That's it for me.
All right. Thanks for listening. I hope that we were able to entertain you for just a little bit. And check us out, like he said, on the YouTube channel and highwindherald.com.
Peace out, everybody.